Hello my wonderful friends, welcome back to my channel. My name's Tori if you're new, and I am so stinking excited that you're here. We are going through my June wrap up, and I'm going to stick with the structure that I have been. So I start with my lowest rated books and we work our way up to my highest rated books for the month. If you like this video, please be sure to give it a big thumbs up, subscribe to my channel, and let's talk about some books. Okay, so June was kind of a continuation of my weird reading mood that I had in May. I am going to start with a book that I did not give a rating to, and I've mentioned this before, but I really don't give ratings anymore to mangas or graphic novels because I find them very difficult to rate. So in June I read volume 6 of Death Note. Didn't give it a rating. I'm still really enjoying this series. I didn't enjoy this one as much as volumes 4 and 5 because of the character interactions. It's really transitioning heavily into a police investigation detective series, and I found a lot of the really fun interactions were with the actual Shinigamis, and they haven't been as present in volume 6, so I really didn't enjoy it as much, but still the art style is so stinking cool. I really like Death Note. If you're just getting into manga, I feel like Death Note is such a popular one and it's really, really cool. So after Death Note, we're moving into my grouping of 3-star books. The first 3-star book that I will talk about for June was King of Battle and Blood by Scarlett St. Clair. It is a new adult vampire romance. And you guys know me, I love Scarlett St. Clair, so I was really excited for this book. It was a little bit of a disappointment compared to her A Touch of Darkness series for me. This book, we follow Isolde, who considers her wedding day to be her death day. She is promised to this vampire king named Adrian in order to stop this war between her people. So Izzy is a human, and her mortal kingdom is one of the kind of last standing because King Adrian is just conquering the entire world, taking over all of these kingdoms. However, he is selective of who he turns into a vampire, but obviously the mortals don't prefer to be ruled by vampires. From everything that she's heard of Adrian, he is just an absolute monster, but when she gets married to him, she gets to see a little bit more under the surface, and it kind of changes her opinion on him. She travels to his court, which is the Red Palace in Revica, but it isn't the court she ends up fearing the most. It's Adrian and her intense attraction to him. Wrapped in mystery and a past he refuses to discuss, Adrian nevertheless starts to become less of a monster to Isolde. Despite their undeniable chemistry, Isolde can't help but wonder why the king, fierce, complicated, ambitious, and at times inexplicably tender, chose her as a consort. I did enjoy this book. It's not like a super heavy world building craziness in terms of a fantasy, which I really liked. So that was really easy. It was really easy to follow and get into, but mainly because this book does not have a lot of plot until the last fourth of the book. So it was a bit surprising. The first 75% of this book is all smut. No complaints here. I was just a little bit surprised because Scarlett St. Clair does usually have an interesting plot, supports and kind of builds her romances around, whereas this really started with the romance. It starts with kind of insta love, and the last 25% is when she hits you with the plot to make you want to read the next book. So it wasn't my favorite like structure for a book, but I still enjoyed it nonetheless. This is a collection of 3 books. It's a Kindle Unlimited romance series called The Hades Trials. So this collection includes The Power of Hades, The Passion of Hades, and The Promise of Hades. These you can absolutely fly through. They're like 200 pages each, and it is a very suspenseful plot. I gave the first book in this series 4 stars. I gave the second book 3.5, and I gave the third book 3 stars. This is a Hades and Persephone retelling. Persephone is living her best life. She lives in New York City. She is a student to become this like landscaper, but to create rooftop gardens. Like, it is really, really cool. She works at this little cafe. She's living in New York City with her human brother, and she gets duped. She gets tricked by Zeus. He entangles her in this whole debacle that Zeus set up. He tricks Persephone to come into the underworld and participate in the Hades trials. Zeus is trying to marry off Hades to whatever woman is able to win these trials. Hades has to marry them. Hades does not want to participate in this. He is very upset because after his first wife, he doesn't want to marry anyone ever again. He is traumatized. Persephone, we learn, was made to forget her past. Her past isn't what she thought it was. It was really fun. I was just expecting these to be like a smutty Hades and Persephone romance and retelling. There was no smut in these, like zero smut, and that's why I was so disappointed. However, if you do like tropes around like deadly games, deadly trials, fighting to survive, I think that you would like this, and I am a simp for Hades and Persephone. I just love their story so much that I was still here for it, even though I was extremely disappointed that there was no smut. You're gonna tell me that you're gonna name a book The Passion of Hades and not put any smut in there?
I don't understand.
I did a whole reading vlog and series review for these books, so if you want more of my thoughts on them, I will link it up above and down below. The next book that I read, and I gave it 3.5 stars, was To Kill a Kingdom by Alexandra Christo. This is a really good YA fantasy for summer because it is a Little Mermaid retelling, essentially. It has a much darker twist on it. So we follow Princess Lyra, and she is a siren. She's not a mermaid. She's a siren. In this story, mermaids are much more like fish, whereas sirens are truly like half humanoid, half, you know, mermaid with their tail type thing. But sirens are very vicious creatures. So Princess Lyra is siren royalty. She's the most lethal of them all. She is known as the Prince Slayer or something like that. She loves to kill humans, and she has a particular fetish for killing human princes and taking their hearts, burying them under the floor in her sea bedroom. A twist of fate forces her to kill one of her own, and to punish her daughter, the Sea Queen transforms Lyra into the one thing that sirens loathe the most, a human. In order to return to her siren self, because she absolutely hates being a human, she must deliver Prince Elion's heart to the Sea Queen, or remain a human forever. So it is a monster versus monster hunter type trope. The depiction of the magical creatures, the sea creatures and the magical creatures in this world, it was very well done with that really dark twist to it. I just found the plot very predictable. Like, you know what's gonna happen from the beginning. There really weren't any plot twists in here that kept me like super invested and wanting to like fly through this read. It was pretty average in my opinion. It was just kind of lukewarm, and then after I finished this, I really didn't want to read any other fantasies for the rest of the month. That was To Kill a Kingdom. Then I have Gothicanna. This book is so huge, and like, I don't know why. This is a dark romance, a dark gothic romance. It has a professor-student romance, which is obviously kind of that forbidden love type trope. It is very dark. I will say, so we follow Corvina Clem. She has had a very interesting upbringing. She grew up with just her mother. Her father died when she was very young. Her mother suffered from mental illness, schizophrenia to be exact, and they kind of grew up very isolated in a cabin in the woods. Her mom homeschooled her. They practiced kind of witchcrafty type hobbies, which was cute. Like, they would go into the woods in a full moon and charge their crystals. Corvina grew up reading tarot, like all of that kind of fun stuff. But she gets a handwritten letter that's inviting her to attend this 2-year university that has a really odd reputation. They only invite very unique individuals to the school, and the school has a very unsavory reputation of like death and being haunted and just all of the creepy gothic castle-y school vibes. She accepts it as a sign from the universe. She goes to the University of Varenmore and she meets Vad Deverell, who is a closed book. He is a professor there. Everyone says that he's super creepy and he has a reputation for dating students, but whoever he dates has a very untimely end. So they obviously get entangled with each other. Their smut, their romance is like really just a fun time. I would say if you're picking up this book, don't take it super seriously because Corvina is kind of the I'm not like every other girl type thing. And Vad Deverell is like a bit weird at times. So I buddy read this with Nikki from Nikki Lopez and we didn't take it seriously. We were kind of making fun of some parts, but other parts, oh my gosh, that's stunning. Love that. I was much more invested in this because of the aesthetic. I loved the aesthetic. I did love the creepiness to it. I loved the kind of haunted factors of this school, and it was overall a pretty good time. So 3-star read. Fun time. And then my last 3-star read was Finish Line by Kate Stewart. This is the 3rd book in the Ravenhood series. You can see I tabbed it. I did like this book, but if I'm being really honest, I should have probably given this a lower rating. I probably should have given it a 2-star. I loved the first 2 books of this series so much. And initially the Ravenhood series was supposed to be a duology, so just the first 2 books, Flock and Exodus. This was written after the fact because I guess fans had been asking Kate Stewart to kind of finish the series off with an epilogue type book. So think of the Finish Line as a very extended and drawn out epilogue in my opinion. This book is over 400 pages and in my opinion it's very unnecessary. I liked where the book ended with Exodus. I like where the series ended with Exodus. This was a lot of resurfacing old emotions, a lot of details, a lot of the 2 main characters just like going into their emotional past and baggage and like sorting through it to try to figure out if they can have like a happy ending or a happy life. I gave it 3 stars. In reality, I liked it kind of less than 3 stars, but do with that what you will. And I didn't provide a synopsis for the Finish Line because I don't want to spoil anything. We're moving into my 4 stars. I had 2 and they're actually both 4.5. The first one that I'm going to talk about is Stolen Tongues by Felix Blackwell. Hopefully I remembered his last name. This book was the
Scariest book I've ever read in my entire life.
And I am not being dramatic. This book starts off scary and you're like, I can't even imagine how this book is going to get any scarier, and then it just gets scarier. It blew my stinking mind. The creepiness, the tension, like this book wasn't even gory or like gruesome per se. It was actually just so scary with the suspense and how stinking creepy it was. So the synopsis for this book, we follow 2 little lovebirds. They are fiancés or they're recently married. They go to their in-laws' cabin in the woods for like a wintry getaway. They get snowed in and they're like, oh my gosh, we're gonna go hiking, we're gonna go snowshoeing, it's gonna be so stinking cute. Well, they get some really creepy vibes and they're sleeping in the cabin at night and they start to hear voices outside of their window. I wanna go home. The voices continue to absolutely terrify them because not only are these voices of strangers, voices of little kids, voices of women, then the voices start to mimic their own voices. And so like for Felix, it starts to mimic his fiance's or his wife's voice. The wife or the fiance, I'm sorry, I can't remember what they are. The wife has this condition where she has night terrors. It's like a very known thing and she talks a lot in her sleep. In her sleep, she starts talking back to the voices outside. So, They leave the cabin because they are terrified out of their freaking minds, and the voices follow them home. And they have to figure out, how do we get rid of this creature, this thing, these voices? How do we stop this? Because we literally can't sleep. We're terrified out of our minds. This thing is playing on our worst fears, and they have to figure out how to solve this issue, how to rid this curse. The writing of this book is impeccable. Second 4.5 book that I had for June was A Touch of Darkness by Scarlett St. Clair. I read this book I read this series actually in 2020, or maybe right at the start of 2021. So it had been a while since I read this book, this series, and I loved this series so stinking much. It's a Hades and Persephone retelling. Persephone is the goddess of spring in title only. When she was a little girl, flowers have only shriveled at her touch, and then moving to New Athens, she hoped to lead an unassuming mortal life. Going to university, she's studying to be a journalist, but all of that changes when she sits down in a forbidden nightclub to play a hand of cards with a hypnotic and mysterious stranger. Well, it turns out that stranger is Hades, and she enters unknowingly into a deal with him. She has to now create life in the underworld. The bet does more than just expose Persephone's failure as a goddess. As she struggles to sow the seeds of her freedom, her love for the god of the dead grows, a love that is both captivating and forbidden. This book is such a beautiful story of accepting yourself and self-love, and I love how Hades like helps her do that and accept her identity and really own her identity, while also building up her confidence to stand up to the kind of like bullies and people that are controlling her life, and her being able to kind of sever those ties and be like, I want to live my own life. I want to make my own decisions, like you don't control me type thing. I also just really personally identify very strongly with this Persephone that Scarlett St. Clair built. So I know that not everyone would rate this book as highly as me. The first time I read it, I gave it 5 stars. This time around, I gave it 4.5. I love this relationship. I love this Persephone. I love this Hades so, so much. And obviously I tabbed the absolute heck out of it. I just love it so stinking much. I love the smut in this book. I love their entire relationship. Everything about it is just so cute. Yeah, so love this book so much. We are on to my 5 stars. So I had 3 5 stars in June. The first one that I'll talk about was a mafia romance book. It is the second book in the Maid series by Danielle Laurie, and that was The Maddest Obsession. I did not want to give this book 5 stars. Literally did not. I can go a little bit into the synopsis of this because although it's the second book in a series, it's a spin-off of different characters from the first book. In this book, we follow Gianna and Christian, and I wrote an updated synopsis for this book, and this is just what I want to leave you with. He kills anyone that even looks at her in cold blood, but he is such a cinnamon roll for her and her alone. And she's a 10, but she's the bane of his existence and the object of all his desires. That is like the best synopsis, the best brief synopsis of this book that I can give you. I feel like if you go into this book not knowing a lot, it's better, because that's what I did. I loved the smut in this book. I loved their relationship. I loved the development of this relationship. I love Christian. This book was just so much stinking fun. And it was funny because I was like 30% of the way through this book and I was like, I don't know, they're so toxic and they're self-sabotaging and I don't know how I feel. And then by the end of it, I was like, I'm obsessed with these two. I'm so obsessed. But the amount of enjoyment I got from reading that book and how obsessed I was by the end of it with those two characters, I was like, I have to. Like, if I didn't give it 5 stars, I would just be lying to myself, you know? The second to last book I'm going to talk to you about is The Great Gatsby by F. Scott Fitzgerald. This, if you don't know, is my absolute favorite classic. I love it so, so much. The last time I had read this was in high school, but I literally was obsessed with it. Like,
this book became my entire personality in high school.
What I actually ended up doing is I read the first half of this book in my physical copy and I was tabbing, but then I switched to the audiobook for the last half, and the audiobook is so good. It's only 6 hours long, and that's if you listen to it on like 1.0 speed. So it's a really short book. It's even a short book to read. I feel like this is a very approachable classic. So if you don't know what this book is, it takes place during the Jazz Age, the story of the fabulously wealthy Great Gatsby and his love for the beautiful Daisy Buchanan. They have lavish parties on Long Island at a time when the nation was gin and sex obsessed. It's an exquisitely crafted tale of America in the 1920s. It's told through the perspective of Daisy's cousin and Gatsby's friend and neighbor, Nick Carraway. I love Nick. I also love all of the side characters. I just love this story so, so much. The overwhelming sense of romanticism that his writing brings out, romanticizing affairs and romanticizing summer flings, and really his criticism of marriage, I would say, and then also the overwhelming feeling of just melancholy by the end of this book. It's a roller coaster ride of emotions. So obviously 5 stars. The next book that I read in June was Medusa by Jessie Burton, and this copy is illustrated by Olivia Lomenick Gill. This is a retelling of Medusa's story, and it is so incredible. This is one of my favorite books of all time now. Obviously gave it 5 stars. I would give it 20 stars if I could. Also, this copy, like this book, it's an illustrated novel. It's very short. It's about 200 pages. It is so freaking beautiful. Not only the writing that is so mesmerizing, lyrical, beautiful. It literally makes me want to cry. Also, the illustrations are so freaking gorgeous. I have no words. This book is taking over my entire life and soul. This book is going to become my entire personality. I love Medusa with my entire heart and soul. She is a goddess queen, even though she is just depicted as a gorgon. She's amazing. I love her so much. So this retells Medusa's story. Just know that big trigger warnings with this: rape and absolutely freaking disgusting victim blaming. This is a very approachable retelling to her story. So if you're someone who likes Greek retellings, but you hate that kind of older style writing that's a little bit more difficult to understand, this is dialogue between Medusa and one of her sisters. Medusa: if there were ever someone, a boy for example, why would there ever be a boy? If there ever were, you must never deny who you are or pretend to be the woman that you think he would want you to be. You'll be walking on a lonely road that leads to nowhere. I stared at her. If he truly likes you, Med, he will take you for who you are and consider himself lucky to know you. Oh my gosh. The criticism of the male gaze in this book, excellent. The calling out of victim blaming, superb. The story of Medusa and how she was absolutely taken advantage of and raped and then victim blamed and punished for it, heart-wrenching. Medusa is made out to be a monster, but really the monsters were those who treated her so incredibly poorly. And it wasn't just one person, it was society. Society treated her so poorly, and they make Medusa out to be the monster, but really the monster is society in this book. Oh my gosh, it was so beautiful. The prose is just flowing. This book is everything to me. And those are all the books that I read in June, my friends. I hope that you enjoyed this video. If you did, please be sure to give it a big thumbs up. It really helps my channel and it lets me know what content y'all like to see so that I can make more of it. I will catch you in the comments and I will see you in my next one, friends. Bye.